This article treats the reckoning of days, months and years in the calendar used by adherents of the Zoroastrian faith. Zoroastrian religious festivals are discussed elsewhere, but have a fixed relationship to Nawruz, the New Year festival, whose timing is discussed below. Three distinct versions of the calendar are currently in use by different Zoroastrian communities. In this article, except where explicitly noted to the contrary, Western-style dates prior to October 5, AD 1582 are reckoned according to the Julian calendar. Subsequent dates are according to the Gregorian calendar, in which the 15th of October 1582 was the day following the 4th of October 1582. English spellings follow this recommended usage. Avestan Calendar, the forerunner of all modern Zoroastrian calendars, is the system used to reckon dates in the Persian Empire. In 539 BC, Persia's rulers conquered Babylon, and soon afterwards, at least by the 4th century BC, adopted the Babylonian lunisolar calendar for civil purposes. This kept in step with the seasons, unlike the religious calendar which consisted of 12 months each containing 30 days, adjusted at the time by the addition of 5 epigeminal days at the end of the year to bring the total up to 365. The earliest Zoroastrian calendar follows the Babylonian in relating the 7th and other days of the month to Ahura Mazda. This Avestan calendar, of 360 days, required regular correction to keep it synchronized with the solar year. This was achieved by intercalating a 13th month roughly once every 6 years. In the civil calendar, intercalations did not always follow a regular pattern, but during the reign of Artaxerxes II, astronomers utilized a 19-year cycle which required the addition of a month called Adaru II in years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14 and 19, and the month Ululu II in year 17 of the cycle. Older research suggests the first intercalation took place in 309 BC. Fuller information on the naming of months in the Zoroastrian calendar will be found below, but it should be noted that the first month of the year was called Frewardan, and the first day of Frewardan was the New Year's Day, or Nawruz, from which all other religious observances were reckoned, this day being, in theory, the day of the northern vernal equinox, the 21st of March. Following Alexander's conquest of Persia in 330 BC, the Seleucids instituted the Hellenic practice of counting years from the start of an era, as opposed to starting a new count at the beginning of the reign of each individual king. They therefore counted years of the era of Alexander. This practice was not considered acceptable to the Zoroastrian priests, who consequently founded a new era, the era of Zoroaster, which incidentally led to the first serious attempt to establish a historical date for the prophet. The Parthians, who succeeded the Seleucids, continued the Seleucid Hellenic tradition. Development of a 365-day calendar. Mary Boyce has observed that contemporary scholars are divided on whether this 365-day calendar was in fact preceded by a 360-day calendar of Zoroastrian observances. A 365-day calendar, with months largely identical to the Egyptian calendar, was introduced shortly after the conquest of Egypt by the Achaemenid ruler Cambyses. The 5 additional days were inserted after the 12th month. These 5 days were named Gather Agar days, after the ancient Avesta hymns of the same name. In AD 224, when the Babylonian calendar was replaced by the Zoroastrian one for Wardan and the New Year celebration of Nawruz had drifted to the 1st of October. The older custom of counting regnal years from the monarch's coronation was reinstated. At this point the calendar was realigned with the seasons by delaying the epage moni by 8 months and adjusting the dates of the Gafhanbar. Accordingly, this caused confusion, since the new year now fell 5 days earlier than before, and some people continued to observe the old date. After 46 years, with one forward and now on the 19th of September, another calendar reform was implemented by Ardashir's grandson Hormastai. During the first years after implementation of the new gather days, the population had not universally adopted the new dates for religious festivals, resulting in official celebrations taking place 5 days earlier than popular celebrations. In later years the population had observed the gather days, but the original 5-day discrepancy persisted. Hormast's reform was to link the popular and official observance dates to form continual 6-day feasts. Nawruz was an exception. The first and the 6th days of the month were celebrated as different occasions. Lesser Nawruz was observed on 1 Farwardan. 6 Farwardan became Greater Nawruz, a day of special festivity. Around the 10th century AD, the Greater Nawruz was associated with the return of the legendary king, Jamt. In contemporary practice it is kept as the symbolic observance of Zoroaster's birthday, or Khordad Sal. Mary Boyce has argued that sometime between AD 399 and AD 518 the 6-day festivals were compressed to 5 days. The major feasts, or gafimbars, of contemporary Zoroastrian practice are still kept as 5-day observances today. By the reign of Yazdegerd-III, the religious celebrations were again somewhat adrift with respect to the proper seasons. The calendar had continued to slip against the Julian calendar since the previous reform at the rate of 1 day every 4 years. Therefore, in 632 AD, the new year was celebrated on the 16th of June. By the 9th century, the Zoroastrian theologian Zadspram had noted that the state of affairs was less than optimal, and estimated that at the time of final judgment the two systems would be out of sync by 4 years. In AD 1006, the month Farwardan had returned to the correct position so that 1 Farwardan coincided with the northern vernal equinox. The religious festivals were therefore returned to the traditional months, with Nawruz once again being celebrated on 1 Farwardan. The reckoning of years. The 16th of June AD 632 is the start date for the current mainstream Zoroastrian reckoning of years. Yazdegerd-III was the last monarch of the Sasanian dynasty, and since the custom at that time was to count regnal years since the monarch ascended the throne, the reckoning of years was continued. In the absence of a Zoroastrian monarch under Islamic rule, Zoroastrian dates are distinguished by the suffix y, z for Yazdegerd era. The usage I is also found. Isolated pockets of Asia Minor use an alternative reckoning of years which predates the Yazdegerd era, being based on a supposed date of the birth of Zoroaster on the 3rd of March 389 BC. On this calendar, the 22nd of July AD 2000 was the first day of Zoroastrian year 2390. Yet another form of reckoning is the Xerath-Austrian religious era, adopted in AD 1990 by the Xerath-Austrian Assembly of California. This is based on the putative association of the mission of Zoroaster with the dawn of the astrological age of Aries, calculated for this purpose to have been the northern vernal equinox of 1737 BC. Hence the year 3738 ZRE began in AD 2000. The Zoroastrian community, both in Iran and in diaspora, have also been said to have accepted it, the former doing so in AD 1993. A briefing paper from the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe indicates that they recognize this usage to have been pragmatically adopted by Zoroastrians in Iran, while the diaspora continues to use the YZ system. The Kadima Calendar, the cycle of days and months unaltered since the 16th of June AD 632, and the cycle of religious observances unaltered since at least AD 1006, form a stable calendar which is still in use today. Although Persia came under Arab Islamic rule in AD 651, the civil reckoning of months and days was only disrupted for a short time and had returned to use for civil purposes within a century. Alternative names to distinguish this calendar from others which developed in due course. The name Kadima became attached to it, a name which means old or ancient, and will also be found with alternative spellings: Qadmi, Qadmi, Kadimi, Kadmi, Kudmi, Gadimi. Relationship with the Julian and Gregorian calendars. The Julian day number corresponding to the 16th of June AD 632 is 1,952,063. The Julian day number of Nawruz, the first day of year Y of the Yazdagurdi era, is therefore 1,952,063 plus times 365. The 22nd of July AD 2000 was Nawruz and the first day of 1370 YZ, according to the Kadima reckoning. In the Julian year AD 1300, 669 YZ began on the 1st of January, and 670 YZ on the 31st of December of the same year. The Shahanshah calendar, a 365-day calendar, drifts ahead of the tropical year at a rate of approximately 1 day every 4 years. A 9th-century Zoroastrian text, the Denkid, explicitly acknowledged several methods of compensating for this drift: a leap day every 4th year, adding 10 days every 40th year. A leap month of 30 days once every 120 years. 5 months once every 600 years. 1,461 Zoroastrian years equal 1,460 Julian years. The Denkid then states, the time of 6 hours should be kept apart from the last days of the year for many years, till amount to ... And it is the admonition of the good faith that the rectification should not be made till a month is completed, and more than a period of 5 months should not be allowed. The Denkid, which was not Zoroastrian scripture but a religious manual, therefore, favored the solution of a leap month once every 120 years, with a fallback of adding 5 months after 600 years if this were missed. This practice was not, however, adopted by Zoroastrians living in Islamic Persia. Many Zoroastrians migrated from the Middle East to India during the 10th century, becoming known in India as Parsis. They had knowledge of the Denkid's proposal. At some point between 1125 and 1129, the Parsi Zoroastrians of the Indian subcontinent inserted such an emblematic month, named Aspand Ahmad Vaisak. The month would also be the last month intercalated. Subsequent generations of Parsis neglected to insert a 13th month. Around AD 1720, an Irani Zoroastrian priest named Jamas Peshotan Velati traveled from Iran to India. Upon his arrival, he discovered that there was a difference of a month between the Parsi calendar and his own calendar. Velati brought this discrepancy to the attention of the priests of Surat, but no consensus as to which calendar was correct was reached. Around AD 1740, some influential priests argued that since the visitor had been from the ancient homeland, his version of the calendar must be correct, and their own must be wrong. On the 6th of June 1745 AD, a number of Parsis in and around Surat adopted the calendar which had continued in use in Iran, now to be identified as the Kadima reckoning. Other Parsis continued to use the reckoning which had become traditional in India, and called the calendar Shahanshahi. Alternative names. The name Shahanshāhi means imperial and will also be found with alternative spellings. Shahanshāhi, Shahanshai, Shenshai, probably a corruption of imperial, Shensei, Rasimi, traditional, Shashai, of uncertain meaning. Arzan Lali, the author of Zoroastrian Calendar Services website, comments. Adherents of other variants of the Zoroastrian calendar denigrate the Shahanshāhi as royalist. Relationship with the Julian and Gregorian calendars. The 21st of August AD 2000 was Nawruz and the first day of 1370 YZ, according to the Shahanshāhi reckoning, because the one-off intercalation of 30 days happens sometime before the Nawruz of AD 1129. We can be confident that in the Julian year, 498 YZ began on the 12th of February by the Kadima reckoning, but the 14th of March by the recently introduced Shahanshāhi, the Julian day number of Nawruz, the first day of all subsequent Shahanshāhi years. Y of the Yazdagirdi era is therefore 1,952,093 plus times 365. Parsi calendar. The Fizli calendar. At the start of the 20th century, Khurshedji Kama, a Bombay Parsi, founded the Zarthosti Fasilis al-Mandal, or Zoroastrian Seasonal Year Society. In 1906, the society published its proposal for a Zoroastrian calendar which was synchronized with the seasons. This Fizli calendar, as it became known, was based on an older model, introduced in 1079 during the reign of the Seljuk Malik Shah, in which had been well received in agrarian communities. The Fizli proposal had two useful features: a leap day once every 4 years, and harmony with the tropical year. The leap day, called a Vardad Salgar, would be inserted, when required, after the 5 existing gather days at the end of the year. New Year's Day would be kept on the northward vernal equinox, and if the leap day was applied correctly, would not drift away from the spring. The Fizli Society also claimed that their calendar was an accurate religious calendar, as opposed to the other two calendars, which they asserted were only political. The new calendar received little support from the Indian Zoroastrian community, since it was considered to contradict the injunctions expressed in the Denkid. In Iran, however, the Fizli calendar gained momentum following a campaign in 1930 to persuade the Iranian Zoroastrians to adopt it, under the title of the Avestan Calendar. In AD 1925, the Iranian parliament had introduced a new Iranian calendar, which incorporated both points proposed by the Fizli Society, and since the Iranian national calendar had also retained the Zoroastrian names of the months, it was not a big step to integrate the two. The Avestan calendar was duly accepted by many of the Zoroastrians. Many Orthodox Iranian Zoroastrians, especially the Sharif Abadis of Yazd, continue to use the Kadima. However, festivals in leap years. The Zoroastrian year in Kadimian Shahanshāhi observance concludes with 10 days in memory of departed souls, 5 Muqtad days on the last 5 days of the 12th month, and 5 more Muqtad days, which are also the 5-day festival of Hamas Yem, on the 5 gather days. The penultimate day of the 12th month is Maresh Jashan. In a common year of the Fizli observance, Muqtad is observed 11 to 20 March, with Hamas Yem and the gather days 16 to 20 March. Maresh Jashan is on the 14th of March. In a leap year of the Fizli observance, Muqtad is observed 10 to 19 March, with Hamas Yem and the gather days 15 to 19 March. Maresh Jashan is on the 13th of March. The leap day, the 20th of March, called a Vardad Salgar, is considered a duplication of Wahishtwash, the 5th gather day, but is not reckoned as Muqtad Hamas Yem. Reckoning of years in AD 1906, Nawruz of 1276 YZ fell on the 15th of August for followers of the Kadima Calendar, and the 14th of September for those observing Shahanshahi. There was therefore a 6-month gap between the Fizli and Kadima New Year observances, and a 7-month gap to the Shahanshahi. The online calendar converters cited at the bottom of this page all give the current Fizli year as 1381 YZ, the same year as the Kadima and Shahanshahi. However, the accumulated leap days not reckoned in the latter two calendars add up to a whole year in just over 1,508 years. Since there is exactly one Fizli year for every Gregorian year, then day 1 of the proleptic Fizli calendar would be the 21st of March AD 631, with year 2 beginning on the 21st of March AD 632. But Yazdegerd-III did not ascend the throne until the 19th of June AD 632, leading to the curious quirk that the base date for the reckoning of years ends up in year 2 of the Fizli calendar. Alternative names. The name Fizli will also be found in alternative forms. Fasili, Bastani, Iranian for traditional. Relationship with the Gregorian calendar. The 21st of March AD 2000 was Nawruz and the first day of 1370 YZ, according to the Fizli reckoning. Dr. Ali Jafari describes the Fizli calendar as an almost tropical calendar. It is corrected by observing the leap year. Webster's Online Dictionary and various unreferenced sources state that the Fizli calendar follows the Gregorian, and it is shown strictly following the Gregorian calendar in the period AD 2009 to 2031 in the tables published by R.E. Kadva. The Gregorian calendar itself, however, will not keep the 21st of March as the date of the northern vernal equinox forever. It has a deviation of 1 day every 5,025 years. Relationship with the Iranian calendar. The civil calendar in Iran since the 31st of March AD 1925 has been the solar Hijri calendar. This is strictly tied to the actual northward equinox, rather than a mathematical approximation to it. An Iranian day is reckoned to begin at midnight. Iranian time is 3.5 hours ahead of GMT. New Year's Day is defined to be the day, as reckoned by Iranian time, when the northward equinox occurs on or before noon of the day, or during the 12 hours following the noon of the preceding day. This means that the pattern of leap years in the Iranian calendar is complex, usually following a 33-year cycle where the leap day is inserted every fourth year, but in year 33 instead of year 32, but with occasional 29-year cycles. From 1960 to 1995, the northward equinox always fell at such a time that New Year's Day in Iran occurred on the day called the 21st of March in the Western calendar, but this equivalence was not always true before March 1960, and the exact correspondence broke down again in 1996. In 1959, and at 4-year intervals back to 1927, Iranian New Year's Day fell on the 22nd of March in the Gregorian calendar. In 1996 and subsequent Gregorian leap years, Iranian New Year's Day falls on the 20th of March. The pattern will shift back to a matching set of leap years in AD 2096. The sources cited above state that the Fizli calendar both follows the Gregorian and was such that New Year's Day coincided with vernal equinox. These two statements are incompatible. The Fizli calendar cannot track both the Gregorian leap years and strictly start on the vernal equinox. Further, any calendar strictly tied to the day of the equinox must define when the day starts and ends, which depends on longitude. A briefing paper from the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe indicates that the Irani Zoroastrian calendar does not shift and commences on the 21st of March. But it is important to note that all Iranians, including Zoroastrians, celebrate Nawruz on the actual day of the northward equinox. Therefore some years it can be 22nd March. Astronomical and mystical aspects of the calendars. The three different Zoroastrian calendar traditions are similar with regard to the principle of the beginning of the months. They are structurally similar to the Armenian calendar and the Mayan Harb calendar, but different from the Iranian calendar, the Julian calendar, and the French revolutionary calendar, whose epochs of the months are fixed to the equinoxes, solstices, as of the signs of Western astrology. The Kadima and the Shahanshāhi Zoroastrian calendar use merely 5 epagomenal days, similar to the French revolutionary and the Coptic calendar, so the year count slowly travels through the tropical year. The naming of the months recalls the time of the origination of the Zoroastrian calendar. According to Mary Boyce, it seems a reasonable surmise that Nawruz, the holiest of them all, with deep doctrinal significance, was founded by Zoroaster himself. Future developments of the calendars. The Fizli calendar has become very popular outside India, especially in the West, but many Parsis believe that adding a leap day is against the rules, and they mostly continue to use the Shahanshāhi calendar. There is a proposal to correct matters by restoring the leap month, but unless this happens, the Shahanshāhi and Kadima years will continue to start earlier and earlier. The unrevised Kadima calendar would eventually coincide with the Fizli calendar in Gregorian year 2508. The Shahanshāhi New Year will next fall on the 21st of March in 2632. In 1992, all three calendars happened to have the first day of a month on the same day. Many Zoroastrians suggested a consolidation of the calendars. No consensus could be reached, though some took this opportunity to switch to the Fizli observance. Some priests objected on the grounds that if they were to switch, the religious implements they utilized would require reconsecration, at not insignificant expense. It has also been proposed that the Shahanshāhi calendar could be brought back into harmony through the intercalation of whole months. In the UK, most Zoroastrians are Indians who follow the Shahanshāhi calendar. Nevertheless, noting that Iranian Zoroastrians mostly follow the Fizli calendar, the ZTFE marks observances of both calendars.